Welcome to the latest episode of the Low Production High Value Show, a show for and about entrepreneurs.
Well, welcome to the latest episode. Today's guest is Dan Sanchez from Social Media Examiner. Welcome. Great to have you with us.
Thanks for having me.
So we will get into AI and your work there in a few moments, but given that this is a podcast and you've got such depth of experience in podcasting, I wanted to start there, if we may. So for those that know, you had some time with B2B growth and were quite instrumental in growth around podcasting from a content marketing point of view. But I just wanted to get a sense of the history of that. How did you come to or initially get into podcasting, whether it was before B2B growth or that was the catalyst?
It really started with my relationship with James Carberry. We both spoke at a TEDx event and met each other there. Before that, I was like in every single marketing channel, and I was doing all the things from paid media, owned media, blogging, SEO, web design, email marketing funnels and Infusionsoft and like all the stuff. Man, I was a marketer's marketer running all the channels, and not just like I was doing quite well with a lot of the channels. Podcasting was my last channel to really figure out.
Like the one,
and I'm embarrassed now because I wish it had been my first one, because it's made such a dramatic difference in my life. Like, I love that I started with like Google AdWords at the time and landing page optimization. That's where I started. It was a good place. A good place to start. It's a good place to cut your teeth as a marketer, split testing stuff and learning some of the fundamental mechanics of what gets someone to click and to buy and to all that stuff. Good place. But man, podcasting. We met at that TEDx conference, and I was talking about SEO at the time. I'd just figured out I'd tapped into SEO and how to actually do it. I trained a whole group of students at the university I was working at to write blog content that would rank over and over and over again. I was raking in like hundreds of thousands of views of SEO. James gets a hold of that. He's like, dude, based on the way I was doing it too, he's like, podcasting can help with this. I'm like, yeah, let's talk about that. The conversations turned to hanging out at the bar, like getting drinks, talking late about it, turned into me contracting with them, turned to me working full time for him at his agency as a podcaster. But I didn't know much about podcasting, but I had to learn really fast because I became their main consultant. They didn't have any marketers, even though they were serving marketers.
Right.
They're like, Dan, we need someone who knows all the marketing stuff that you know, so you can consult our people and figure out how to best plug podcasting into it. And it'd be nice if you did marketing for us too. That's what I did for Sweetfish Media. I was like their head of marketing, and I was their main consultant. They threw me on their show called B2B Growth, and it's a good sized show. You're generating 1,000, 1,500 downloads an episode, probably 180K downloads a month on that show. Mm-hmm. And I started hosting all the episodes, started learning it the hard way and just grinding it out. I probably did 300, 400 episodes for B2B Growth in my time there, as well as consulting and figuring out how all the different ways podcasts can be used. It's really exciting now, though, because I find while podcasting's changed, it's become like my freaking secret weapon for all things AI. And we'll get to that in a bit. But I think you have some other questions for
But you said you were in all these other areas of marketing, but not podcasting. I recognize, James and Sweetfish were a catalyst, but was there reluctance about podcasting, or just you weren't as curious about it, or it was just you didn't go there because of unfamiliarity? Like, what was, or I don't want to say a roadblock, but
yeah.
What held you back, I guess, is maybe the better way of putting it.
I'm not sure. It's weird because I'd been listening to podcasts since 2000. Back when you had to like pull it down from iTunes and sync it up with your iPod back at the time. I remember listening to podcasts all the way back then. And for some reason, it never occurred to me that might be a good marketing channel. For some reason, it just seemed, I don't know, it just didn't seem like a good growth channel for me, I guess. I didn't really even think about it. And even when I started my first podcast with James, I was nervous as heck to get up on the mic. I wasn't very good on camera yet, but after putting in enough episodes, you just get comfortable with that and you get better at speaking in front of the camera, in front of the microphone. But now I wish it had been my first channel, because podcasting does a lot of things for you. One, I find that once you get over that initial hurdle of the fear of getting in front of the camera, that's probably the hardest part. It's the easiest way to capture content. It's faster than blogging. It's faster than YouTube videos. It's more organic. It builds deep relationships with people. But even better yet, if you do an interview show like the one you're doing here, it's the easiest way to get to know anybody you want to know.
Mm-hmm.
You want to talk and ask some questions to the author of that book you just read? Chances are you could probably get them on your podcast unless they're super famous like Gary Vee, right? I've talked to so many authors of books that I've loved and have learned so much more by then after reading the book, diving into like the nitty gritty and asking them the questions that I'm like, in this page you talked about X, but I wanted to know more about that and digging in with them. So great for learning, but it's also just a great way to build relationships, make friends, meet people that you probably wouldn't have been able to meet before because nobody likes getting that request out of the blue of like, hey, can I pick your brain for 30 minutes? You're like, it's kind of a big ask. We're all busy, right? And some people do that. I still take those calls every once in a while from
Right.
LinkedIn. A podcast is a no-brainer. You're like, sure. There's always value, even if the show has no audience. There's always a value of somebody asking you questions and sometimes pulling content out of you didn't even know you had.
Well, to treat it less as a podcast and more of, I call it an appointment to make content and to have a conversation from which content results. Yes, we'll end up with a podcast episode that's in audio form. Yes, we will end up with a video version of it, but then
Right.
we'll also end up with short clips, both in video and audio. We'll end up with pull quotes that are provocative and spark thinking and so on, all derived from the same conversation, but I've not asked anything more of my guest other than the time and the answers to my questions. But that frame of thinking, like, tell me more about that frame of thinking has evolved from your experience with podcasting. But I'm curious, in the hundreds of episodes that you did and the guests that you had and the clients that you worked with, what's your take on sort of the evolution? We were talking earlier before we hit record about some of the podcasts that are like 5, 7, 10 years old and their origins versus people that are just getting into it now. But I'm just curious, what's your take on the arc that you've had thus far on podcasting?
Podcasting used to be kind of difficult. You had to get like a Zoom recorder for in-person interviews and hook up the mics and do the recording. And the audio part is kind of a pain. Like you have to, if you haven't built with, if you've never heard of Zoom as recorders, I'm not talking about the software app. I'm talking about the hardware piece. It's not different companies, but they have the same name. There's like an audio recorder hardware thing that people in video and audio get. But that's what Tim Ferriss used for his podcast back when it was hard. Or if you were doing digital remote interviews like we're doing now via Riverside, people were figuring out how to do it and rigging it on Skype. And it was, remember how dependable Skype was? It wasn't that dependable. It was rough. But some of those were like that, but it was harder to get up and then figuring out the hosting and formatting. It was more work. Nowadays, gosh, it's easy. Riverside makes it easy. You have free tools like Spotify, who bought Anchor. Now, I think it's just Spotify for creators or podcasters or something.
Right.
It's free. You can host it for free, distribute it. It's just gotten way easier. Essentially, the tech and the tools have changed the game for podcasting because now it's made it more accessible for anybody. And before, a lot of companies hired podcast agencies like Sweetfish to do all the editing and make it easy for you. Nowadays, Sweetfish has had to go up market in order to deal with like all the boutique shops that have just gotten in and made the game a lot easier, or people just figuring it out for themselves. And they've crushed it and going up market and creating really, really good video podcasts now because of it.
Well, I gave a presentation recently about the state of social and some storytelling, and I talked about the Diary of a CEO podcast and how they launched in 2017 as an audio first. And then in 2019, they switched to video. And Stephen Bartlett has talked about how instrumental the being video first. It sounds counterintuitive or like, wait a minute, it's a podcast. It's supposed to be audio. And you're talking about being video first. But this idea of YouTube and video being the aids or catalysts for discovery of podcasts. And I'm just wondering about your thoughts on that. And you just referenced what Sweetfish has done. So
it is one of the problems with podcasting. There's hardly any discoverability baked into it unless you're lucky to get into a new category early. My current show, AI Driven Marketer, I got in early. I started a year and a half ago on AI marketing. So now when you search for AI marketing in any podcast app, my show comes up first. It comes up first on Google, or it comes up like second or third on Google if you search for AI marketing podcast.
Yeah.
Early mover advantage, SEO. If you didn't get that, there's no chance anyone's going to find your podcast, right? Because where else would they find the show? You're going to have to share it on social, but YouTube, on YouTube's a discoverability platform in and of itself, right? That's why you can launch a YouTube channel and not do anything with any other social channel because there's so many ways to get found. It could be promote on the homepage. It can get found in the sidebar menu within other people's videos. It can be found in search because it's the second biggest search engine. You can be found in Google because YouTube videos are getting plugged into Google search results.
Right.
And it has a virality component and a search component that makes YouTube so powerful. So you start doing that with podcasts, and all of a sudden your podcast has a chance to stand out, at least on YouTube. I know about a third of my audience is on YouTube now as I distribute a YouTube video podcast, and it makes a massive difference. A third of my audience is just listening on YouTube. I mean, YouTube, it shouldn't be too big of a surprise because a lot of people actually listen to music on YouTube. Hence, they have a whole music section of it. But a few years ago, they doubled down on podcasting. And based on the surveys I've seen, more and more people are actually watching podcasts. They're not even doing it actively. They might have it on the background watching it, but I do it myself. I might have a commentator talking about something. It's a podcast, but it's a video podcast. And every once in a while, I'll look over to see their face and their reaction to something as they're starting to really get into the news, you know? Maybe they're throwing up like a single graphic because it's what I call audio first video. You don't need the video in order to understand it. But, you know, sometimes a nice visual gives it a little bit more context and a little bit more oomph. It's nice to have that playing in the background as you're doing dishes or folding laundry, or to be able to glance at it. At the same time, I like to be able to listen to it while I drive or go for a run or something without having to check the video too.
I will watch YouTube on my smart TV, and it'll be a podcast, or I'll watch the video version via Spotify. Anyway, we'll see what happens if the rumor is, or not rumor, it's been in the media about Netflix getting into podcasting. So
why not? Everybody else has. So,
yeah, but I mean, that's not like some unknown entering the market. Like the Goliath has entered the market, so we shall see. But before we leave podcasting, I guess, I mean, that's been your experience thus far, your take, but I'm curious, like we talked about discovery, but what other advice might you give people that are considering entering the podcast world, given what's transpiring right now?
To get started with a podcast, there's just a few things you have to figure out. You need to figure out who you're talking to and what you're helping them do. Okay? Those are like your main things. Who's your audience? If you have a business, you already know your audience. In that case, when it comes to B2B podcasts is where I specialize more than your B2C. Like, I don't help anybody start like true crime podcasts, even though it's a movie category. Like, I'm pretty much only doing business podcasts. This is my one place. I found that there are actually 5 different types of B2B podcasts. Most people land into one of 2 types. They are either a thought leadership driven show, or they're an account-based marketing show. There are hybrids of the two.
Right.
A thought leadership one is mainly someone getting on and giving their expertise, educating somebody on things, and that can come through a lot of forms. It can be a Q&A where people come on and ask questions and they give their expertise. It could just be solo episodes. It is possible to do it with a guest, but you probably want to interject more. Otherwise, you're only sharing your guest's expertise instead of your own. Then there's the other major one, which is it's like the content, what James Carberry called the content-based networking version, where you use it to build relationships. You're having people on your show so that you can take away the relationship. And that can be valuable for lots of things because you can meet with potential buyers, potential partners, collaborators, potential vendors. Relationships are what make the world like go round in business, right? I was late to figure that out. I thought it was all about like value propositions and stuff. And I'm like, yeah, like all those are really important, but like people buy from people they know, like, and trust. So friendships make a big difference in that. So there's that. There's a few other types. There's using it for customer service. Like oftentimes you have a large customer base if you're a SaaS app, right? Why not like help them get more out of your tool or your thing or the service by just recording content more easily? Your whole product team could be using a podcast for that. And it's easier to just sit down and have a conversation with your product guys and be like, oh, we've had some users doing X. You could interview your customers and get testimonials out of them, as well as their use cases for other customers to lean onto. You can even use it for internal, because at the end of the day, podcast is just communication. It's easier to record and send it out. Some larger companies use it for internal communication. So the CEO can like have a message to the whole thing. And now instead of having to read it as an email, you can listen to it as a podcast on 2X if you need to, right? So that's it as an internal tool. We used it at Sweetfish as a way to do culture. And we'd have interviews with different teammates because we were remote, and we used it as a different way to get to know our teammates in interesting ways that didn't come up in normal meetings. Right. So there's a lot of different uses, but those are some of my favorite ones.
Well, saw a video recently. It was a video that I watched, but it could have been delivered in audio as well from Anthropic, where they did a round table with members of their engineering team, getting their different perspectives on prompt engineering and some of their philosophies and just like train of thought. And it was like fantastic. And to hear some of the people that like essentially were involved in the building of the tools we're now using and the thinking that went into it and how they themselves use the tools and things like that. But like you said, that's sort of a customer service play. Like it's thinking of their audience, thinking of their users, and like giving them a richer. It's kind of a behind the scenes, access. But I know we were talking earlier about the question, what mic should I buy? That thing and the whole it depends. But I joke about being a member of the AV club in high school and stuff like that. And I have a background in film and television production, and the equipment I used in those days versus what's available to me now. And so here we are talking over Riverside. I have a Yeti mic on my desk. I'm wearing Sony headphones. For less than, $700 or whatever, I'm podcasting in terms of equipment. My hosting is I bought a lifetime subscription or whatever, and it goes out to Spotify and Apple. Yeah. So the barriers to entry are really, really low.
So low.
Not so much getting into brand names, but any thoughts on that from for people just entering the space? Like, don't get hung up on tech. Just focus on what you want to talk about and who you want to talk to, if at all, or anything else there.
Yeah, it can be hard to get past episode 7. Most podcasts die after that. That's kind of the average number where they go to die. If you make it to episode 20, you're in the like 99%.
Yeah, that's what. I've shared that stat that one.
That's true of any channel, right? That's true of any channel. Yeah. It's true of blog. Like I started a blog, you probably won't make it to 20 blog posts. I started a YouTube channel, you're probably not making it to 7 YouTube videos, right? So it's like it just happens. We start things. We don't really have like a long-term game plan. You want to try to find a topic where this is my own personal thing. I don't know if this carries over to other people, but I've started and launched multiple podcasts. I've started and launched multiple blogs. Some have taken off, most have failed, right? Because I just gave up on it. It took me a while to kind of find the topic and the medium. Eventually I discovered that podcast was my medium. It was my favorite way to make content. Once I figured that out, it actually took me a while to find the exact topic. I launched a couple different shows in a couple different ways. Eventually, the AI-driven marketer one took off because, one, AI has a lot of updates, so there's always lots to talk about. But I freaking love learning about AI. And so I've been just having so much fun documenting my learnings and sharing. And I co-host a weekly episode with my brother just to talk shop about what's going on in the space and make it relevant for marketers. Those aren't hard. It's like finding something you love to do. Therefore, it isn't a chore. I don't have to like amp myself up or try to discipline myself to be consistent. And I'm consistent because it's easy and I love it. It's kind of like working out, right? You finally find the like type of workout you like to do, then like great, right? Because I love running. It is not hard for me to build a habit around running because I feel good. I want to get out there. I crave it. Right. It's a lot easier to build and sustain the habit of getting into it and making it past it. Yeah, but eventually all beginners want to know like what's the gear. Right. It's not the best thing to ask in the beginning, but it's always the one that people figure they need to figure out first. So mic, I always recommend the Shure ATR 2100. It's been around a long time. It is a tried and true mic. We sent it to every customer at Sweetfish. It costs $60 to $80. It works really well. It sounds good. It's a USB mic and it has the other port in it, so you could hook it up to a more professional recording thing. It works good on the go, but most people use it, at their home. I usually just get a little cheap tabletop stand for it and hook it up to the laptop and call it good. I recommend it a lot more than the Yeti. You are one of the few people that have made the Yeti sound good, but Yetis, especially for beginners, always get messed up. Because they don't understand how close it needs to be to their mouth, and they don't know how to adjust the gain appropriately, so they almost always put it too far away, and then they jack the gain up, which makes it sound horrible to compensate for it. Yours is like one of the first Yetis I've heard. I'm like, oh, this actually sounds good.
It's sitting,
but I don't like it just because
right there.
I don't know what it is. There's like 2 dials on it, and somehow people mess up the 2 dials. The ATR 2100 just has on and off, and you get it close to your mouth. And then it sounds good. Well, then something like Riverside to record it, you can distribute for free on Spotify. If you have a little bit of money to invest, just a little bit, I always recommend Zencaster over Spotify, or sorry, over the Riverside
Yeah.
Spotify combo, because it's all in one and it's faster.
Yeah.
You can record in the same way Riverside records, edit and distribute all within one app. You don't have to download, upload, nothing. You're just record, edit, publish, done. And so Zencaster is my favorite tool for that reason.
No, and fair point. I mean, you've been doing it longer and part of your core business, so I would appreciate the recommendations. Well, and as a bit of a segue, because you were talking about AI and your use with it, but as you were sort of led into podcasting, I don't think it was the same journey with AI. It strikes me that you sort of jumped in head first, driven by curiosity. Is that a fair assessment?
Yes and no. I was trying to figure out what the heck I could sell as a solopreneur and was failing. I was honestly trying and pivoting like every 2 months. I was trying out something new or different variations of the thing.
Mhm.
And I was getting the leads, but I couldn't close anybody. I was like, what the heck? Like, I was trying to build something around the category of audience growth, and it was not working. People were not buying. ROI was too far removed, took too much time. I was like, crap, okay. Like, I got to figure out what the heck the next thing is. I was getting just enough business around podcasting and marketing automation and odds and ends. I was like, I got to start planting a seed for whatever that next big thing is. And it was
Right.
December of 2023. And I was like, it's probably going to be this AI thing. AI is going to take over. There's not a lot of people buying it now, even though there's so much hype around it that year. It's because I was like, the year ChatGPT had only been out for a year at that point. And I was like, to me, I just had this epiphany moment. I'm like, this is it. I went looking for information to learn what I could about AI when I started realizing this was going to be the thing. So I'm going to go learn everything, and found very little. Very few books written on it because it only been out and only gotten popular within the year. So hardly any books. In fact, no books that were, relevant at that point. There was only a handful of podcasts, and they were no good. Like, no big players had gotten in the game around AI marketing. And AI, yeah, but AI marketing, almost nobody. I was like, holy cow, this is the chance. This is my moment.
I'm
So
in the
I started that
ground floor.
podcast and started hammering it, and saw nothing for a long time. Even though I had an audience on LinkedIn, it took a long time for people to stop associating me with podcasts and start associating me with AI, like a solid year.
Right.
And after a year, that show started to grow substantially. I started getting calls to be on podcasts like this one. And some of those smaller podcasts led to bigger podcasts, which led to me getting on AI Explored, which Michael Stelzner had just started. So he was the first big player to actually get into the game. I guess the one big AI show was the Artificial Intelligence show, or from the what is it? AI Marketing Institute, I think is the name of the company or the
Right.
organization. Paul Reitzer. So they were the one big podcast and show host, and I listened to their show. It's good, but it's more of a news focused, and I wanted to do something more practical. Like, this is what I did. Look at this thing. This is how you do it too. So Michael Stelzner interviewed me, which led to more conversations, which led to me doing a private training in his community, which led to me working for him full time. I still run my own show, but I'm also working for Social Media Examiners. They're
Right.
like senior AI marketing strategist, which is kind of a mouthful, but we just made that up.
Did AI make it up for you?
Nope. No, we just cobbled that one together live on a call.
We'll be back in a moment. And now, a word from our sponsor. Social media has become an imperative for almost every business. Discover how to successfully implement an effective social media strategy that is supported and integrated throughout every part of your organization with this essential book from our host, Andrew Jenkins. Social Media Marketing for Business, Scaling an Integrated Social Media Strategy Across Your Organization, is now available from Amazon or KoganPage.com. Now, back to the show.
Well, and as you said, there wasn't a lot of books or resources out there. I mean, the technology was moving so fast. My take is, when I think back to when the internet was just emerging and the dot-com boom, how fast-paced that period was, but that nothing comes close to this pace of now, where it seems every week there's news. As you're finding on your podcast, there's news from all the different players. It's like an arms race. So-and-so, we've just released version blah, 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 or we've done an update with this new feature. Or there's the existing ones and their updates, and then there's new ones that are entering the space that no one's ever heard of, but suddenly are outperforming the incumbents. Amidst all that, you've been talking about practical applications and so on, but for people just starting to dip their toe in the water and find applicability to themselves, where do you think people should start?
You know, it's funny. I find that there's a lot of people just getting started because it's a new market. Right? A lot of people are getting in for the first time and they're like, well, what do I do with this thing? It's a little intimidating because it's just this blank sheet
You
that
don't
you
know
don't
what
know
you
how to
don't know.
start. You get there and you're like, hey, what would you like to do today? You're like, I don't know. What can I do here? So I've actually been, this is a new podcast series that I'm working on. I'll probably do an episode per use case because I'm actually starting to build a whole series around AI for beginners. And I define a beginner as somebody who hasn't started paying for a chat GPT yet.
Okay.
Okay. So this is like, you probably have the free app, but you haven't found enough value in it to start paying for it.
Right.
And maybe you get in the Claude game or Gemini, but for like most of the population, it's going to be ChatGPT, right?
Yeah.
So that's why I say that.
Well, the brand
But
recognition for them is
yeah, they're the category king. They take 80% of the market until they screw up royally or somebody pulls a couple Hail Marys in a row. They're going to continue being the leader. It's
Yeah.
just the way it is. And it's a freaking awesome tool. Like me and a lot of my pro user friends still spend a lot of time in ChatGPT. So, but here's some of the use cases that I've started that I'm going to be creating more of a series on soon. And going deep into every single one of these use cases because it just is different. A big one for AI that I find people don't really get is that it can do contextual problem solving. If you had a problem before, you went to Google with a question, and then you might refine that question and try to find the answer. But it's like wandering down a maze. You know, you hit a lot of dead ends until you find the right answer, and then you stop and you go, you're done. With AI, you don't have to wander down the maze anymore.
Right.
You can literally give it the full context of your problem. It's not how to grow tomato plants. It's, hey, ChatGPT, I'm having a hard time growing my tomato plant. It's dying right now. It's mid-April. I'm in Middle Tennessee, and I'm in a raised garden bed. Help me troubleshoot why my tomato plant's dying. And it's like, take all that context and actually provide an answer just for you. It's an expert in all the different topics. And as long as you're not asking it for something that hasn't been thought of before, like generally it's going to provide you a really good answer, the more context you give it. So
Because with Google, you're deciphering through the links that are the results of your query, but you're still having to be the editor and navigate the links to see if are they relevant, do they contain the answer that I'm looking for, and I don't necessarily know if that what they present is the right answer for me. But to your point, I get to the crux of the issue by just basically kind of describing my situation.
exactly. I love using the dictate tool, and I just explain it like I'm explaining it to a good friend who also happens to be an expert in the thing I'm asking about. I'm like, hey, here's what I'm dealing with. And I talk to it like a person, and it gives me answers back like a person would if they were conversing through me through text, but it's much faster, of course. Sometimes I actually pull it up on voice mode and show them a picture or show them a video of what I'm dealing with. There's many times I'm troubleshooting the engine in my car, and I'm like pointing it at the thing. And it's like, is this the right piece? No, it's just to the right of that. There you go. Yeah, that's it. That's what you want to check out. It's really freaking good at that stuff. But of course, you can use this for your career, for your marketing campaigns. I use it to troubleshoot my software all the time where I'll just pull up the video on my phone and be like, hey, I can't figure out how to turn off the smart guides on Keynote. Where the heck is the setting for this? And it'll help me figure it out in the menu instead of me searching through all the forums of how to do it. And of course, there's all kinds of different versions of Keynote out there. So which forum's talking about which version? I don't know. People don't list that kind of stuff, right? It's a maze. You don't have to cut. It's almost like having a GPS through any maze of any problem you're now in. You have a partner helping you coordinate the maze of whatever problem you're in. It's contextual problem solving. Yeah. People have some accusations against that, though.
Sorry?
Right? Well, people are like, well, but it hallucinates, Dan. And I'm like, yeah, it does. But guess what? How good were Google's answers? They're written by humans, and humans hallucinate a lot. Have you seen Google lately? They're gotten worse over the last 5 years, intentionally to make you click on the ads more. Why do you think they score Reddit so high? It makes the ads look way more valuable if the answers below them are not as good. Literally, this is how they've been doing it for the last 5 years, which is why you'll have a lot of blogs written by a writer from the Philippines who has never even, like, I remember looking up, like, how to start a vlog. Article from MailChimp, from freaking MailChimp. I can tell that article, that person has never touched a video camera in their life. I'm like, okay, so we're comparing AI's hallucinations, which are getting less and less, to that? I'm like, come on, guys. Okay, you want me to go to scholarly material? Nobody can understand that. And we're not even allowed to access it past the abstract.
Yeah, there's using AI to write content to rank, and there's using AI to help write content that informs, and you decide which one you want to be.
I just find that AI is pretty accurate across a lot of things for very specific like facts, figures, dates. You need to spot check those. If you're just looking for things casually though, like I was at a soccer game for my son and I was like, how much does it cost to have these artificial turfs put down? So I just asked ChatGPT. I didn't even have it search the web. I'm like, how much does it cost? Its ballpark figure, I double checked, was about right. I have it double check me on like my mechanic's quote that he gave me yesterday for fixing the rear struts and springs. And I was like, is this a good deal? And ChatGPT was like, yeah, it's actually a good deal. This is why. Gave me a breakdown to better understand it. I felt good. It's good at helping you fix all those things. So contextual problem solving, it's a big one. I've talked about it for enough now. Let me share some more quickly.
I love it because this is when you use it long enough and start experimenting people using it for recipes, etc. But anyway, just this is where I think the light bulb goes off for people. Like, oh, as you said, they show up to the free chat GPT and it's like, what do you want to do today? Or what questions do you have? And they don't know. I'll call it, tapping into the mind hive to learn from everyone else's testing it out. But so back to your list.
Another one that I love using ChatGPT for is helping me navigate crucial conversations. And this is a classic one. Help me write this email. But let me frame it in a little bit more. Help me write this hard email. There's a lot of times where life hinges on the hard conversations. A lot of big things do. That thing you want to add, that confrontation you need to give that you've been waiting for, that you know you need to have a conversation with, could be your spouse, could be your boss, could be a coworker, could be a friend. Doesn't really matter. There's probably a hard conversation in your life you're avoiding having. Have a conversation with ChatGPT about it. Be like, hey, this is what's going on. This is how I feel. This is what I want to have come across. But I'm nervous. Ask me questions to better get to know the context and then help me troubleshoot this and help me script out what I should say. Those are big conversations. ChatGPT is really freaking good at articulating things in a way that put it in the light that you want it to be in, even though you're emotionally having a hard time with it. It could be as simple as you got an email and you're about to send a reply that's a little hot back to your boss or your coworker. There's been times I've literally been like, I can't reply with this. ChatGPT, help me make this sound more professional. And it's like, oh yeah, Dan, that's a little hot. Here's a better way to get it so you actually get what you want out of this without triggering them, because that's not going to be productive. Here's the script. I remember reading what it wrote. It was so good that my emotions died. And I realized at that moment I was emotionally hot because I felt like I was in a corner. I felt like I was backed in. Like I didn't have a way forward. But once ChatGPT showed me how to communicate a way forward, emotions were gone.
That's type angry.
Magic. It's magic for it to be able to help you figure out the tough conversations. They're tough because we don't know how to navigate them. ChatGPT is an expert at navigating hard conversations. Let it help you through these things. This is a big life thing that we didn't have a tool for. Now we do. Of course, content creation.
But before we get to chorus, just on that, just in case people have concerns, because that scenario or the example you just gave, there's a lot of potentially private information, personal information, etc. So, any advice about not allowing ChatGPT to train itself on that, or to keep it self-contained and maintain privacy and in that instance?
General rule of thumb, don't put anything into the internet that you wouldn't want to be public, for the most part. Like, don't put super private things into ChatGPT.
Right.
It depends on your comfort level, but you got to be ready for those to be exposed. And a lot of people are freaked out even by ChatGPT's new personalization thing where it remembers all the conversations. Right. And they're like, oh, privacy. I'm like, what the heck? They already had all the data. You're actually getting access to that data and actually being put to use for you now because ChatGPT already has all that stuff in their servers. So just FYI, don't send DMs on networks that you wouldn't want the world to see. That's why like Zuckerberg like cleaned up his whole DM history a long time ago because that stuff can come out, right? So just be aware of that. And then I'd say if you want it to be slightly more private, pay for a ChatGPT Teams account, but that's $50 a month at least in order to keep them from being trained on it. Generally, I don't really even think too much about it because I don't really care that much.
Well, and to your point, you can be talking somewhat. You can give it enough information about what you're dealing with without revealing I'll call it sensitive or private information,
Yeah,
and
that's right.
still get the output that you wanted. Anyway, I just wanted to for those that might have some concerns. But even like, you're on Amazon and you're looking at a product, and then in the days that follow, suddenly I'm seeing ads on Facebook for that product that I looked at. That speaks to the fact that what you're doing on the internet is known to a number of entities, and it's going to personalize your experience as you go. So, whether it's ChatGPT or not. Anyway.
And in general, don't put customer data on there.
Yeah.
If you do, anomalize it, remove emails, addresses, phone numbers, all that kind of stuff. Don't put that to ChatGPT. So that's that.
Yeah.
But the third one is content creation. That's how most people are using it. But there's a big
Right.
caveat to content creation. Even though it's really good at coming up with answers for itself, if you're using it to create content for you, whether it's for social or for blog or for your website, generally you never want it to start from scratch. ChatGPT can start from scratch, but is 10 times better if you always give it something to go off of. This is why I love podcasting, because you can feed it this whole transcript and it's not pulling from scratch. It's not making stuff up. It might be filling in the lines a little bit, right? And taking some creative license and expanding on some things a little bit. But generally, it's reflecting the conversation we have. It's reflecting your words. It's reflecting my words. So it's just repurposing like a good ghostwriter at that point, which is very different from it using it to come up with original content, which it can only really it can't really give a lot of original content without a very, very particular prompt. If you're just asking it to come up with a marketing strategy, it's going to give you a generic marketing strategy. But as soon as you start giving it all the context for your business, then all of a sudden it's going to give a more tailored one.
Yeah.
Just the same thing for content creation. Like, give it the main idea. I almost have ChatGPT writes about 3/4 of my LinkedIn posts now, but I dictate the whole idea into it. Or I even will I'll write the whole post. I did this morning. The whole post I posted this morning, I thought it was good. Then I took it to ChatGPT. It's like, this is good, but let me tighten it up a little bit. It was better. It's really good at editing.
Well, I'm aligned with you on this idea. Like, we philosophically don't allow AI to author anything original. We operate on its derivative or derived from inputs. But I tried something. I've been playing around with this. First output. Oh, that's a 4 out of 10. Give me a 10 out of 10. Or that's a first level response. Give me a second level. That's a second level response. Give me a third level. Again, to up the game. And the most recent one, I just thought, you know what? They're talking about don't say please, don't say thank you, don't be polite because of the cost of the processing. So I just said, that's a 4 out of 10. Give me your A game. A 10 out of 10. And it went back and redid it again. And just by being that directed or directive, the elevation of the output was just mind blowing.
Interesting.
Well,
I rarely give it feedback to be like, act as a pro or do more of this. I usually just try to narrow down what I want and why I want it. Like, if it's not quite there, then I just be like, hey, make it more like X. This is why it's missing the mark.
Right. Well, and that's more to your point about the more context you give it, the better it can give you what you want or get closer to what you're envisioning. Well, you're driving the bus in a lot of cases, but where, if at all, has it like given you a wow factor or just surprised you unexpectedly?
It's been doing that more and more, especially now that it can remember more of the conversations we've had previously. My gosh. There's been more times where I've like, can you help me come up with X? And it's like, sure, Dan, here. And I'm like, then I have to tell it back. I'm like, holy freaking cow, ChatGPT. This just rocked my socks off. And it'll give me a fist bump back and be like, come on, let's go. Like, its ability to emotionally connect with you and however you give it is pretty good. But its ability to understand what I want when I want it without me even giving the context sometimes, because it has access to all that memory, has gotten really, really good. For a while, I thought it had gotten better at writing for LinkedIn just because the models got updated. And I'm like, okay, they've updated it in the model. It knows exactly what to write for LinkedIn. And then I saw somebody else say like, hey, ChatGPT wrote this. It's not very good. And just copied and pasted what it gave her verbatim. And I realized, I'm like, the model hasn't gotten better at writing LinkedIn posts. My particular ChatGPT account has just gotten familiar with what I want. And since I've written hundreds of posts for LinkedIn, like, I know how to write for LinkedIn. So now when I ask it to just turn a blob of content that I dictated into a LinkedIn post, it's pretty close to done, because it's learned from me over time what it means. So that blows my mind. That's probably the feature that matters the most right now. That's gotten overshadowed by the last week's worth of features is this personalization one. I think it's
Right.
going to be a really, really big deal in the future, even more than ChatGPT 5, probably even more than the agents will obviously be a massive deal, but like this personalization thing will make the agents an even bigger deal.
Mm.
And now I just haven't even posted this. I think I scheduled this post to post tomorrow, but I'm starting to realize that I need to give ChatGPT more feedback so I can learn how I make decisions. This is a hypothesis. I don't know if this is true or not, but I often have it create content for me or help me think through something. And then I just take what it gives me and then post it or do whatever I want with it, right? I never give it clarity on like, oh yes, this was really good. I actually went with this version. I actually took this title. And now I am. I'm telling it, hey, this is the title I picked. I posted it. Um, that way, over time, my hypothesis is because it's going to remember more and more. Right now, it remembers a summary of each post. It remembers less as time goes on because of the data constraints. But over time, it will remember more and more. Over time, it will get better at predicting what you want specifically. If that's true, and I really believe this is going to be true, then giving it feedback over the years on what you like or don't like will only help it. It's almost like you're training a personal assistant over time, and they'll be able to better recognize your patterns and predict your behavior better, which means I can delegate with more ease.
Mm-hmm.
Some people have been saying, like, oh, companies won't hire you for just you and your AI skills, they'll hire you for you and your AI team. And at first I was like, yeah, but companies can spin up their own AI teams. What's the difference? This makes a big difference. If it's been working with me and collaborating with me for years, and it can get trained on that data over time and my preferences and how I work it and rework it, not just the outputs over time, because anybody can scrape my blog or LinkedIn post and just feed it in and make me a Sanchez clone. Yeah, but it doesn't have all the data on how I handled and made all
Mm-hmm.
that stuff and how I collaborated with AI over a period of years. It's my opinion that that's going to make a difference. Now, we'll have a debate with that with the company. Who gets to keep that, the employee or their company? That's going to be a problem. But I'm going to fight for it being with the employee.
Well, I mean that's an interesting take because the dean of my MBA school described the consultant industry to me, saying you have the big five like McKinsey, et cetera, and they have their best practices. And the analogy is it's in a binder on a shelf. And the staff of the consulting firm may change repeatedly, but they all are singing from the same song sheet. They're all pulling from the same proven best practices. Then you have these small boutique consultancies where the value is not inherent in the proven best practices in a binder on a shelf, but in the talent that is housed within the boutique consultancy. And what you just described strikes me that when I have the expertise of the people, and then I, in a sense, have this new hybridized intellectual property of their thinking married with the history of their thinking and their collaboration with AI. It's hard to replicate that or copy it or, oh, I'm going to swap that individual out. I can't plug them into the matrix the same way as the individual that was just there. We'll see what happens.
We'll see. But I'm giving it more feedback now.
Well, that personalization, as you've been describing, is, I'll call it, where things seem to be headed. Are there things that, as you're advising people for navigating the AI arena, what do you see as overhyped beyond personalization? Where are other elements that are valid or substantive?
AI agents is overhyped right now.
Okay.
I understand why they're hyping it. It will be a big deal. We are not there yet. It is not. Everything they're calling an agent isn't an agent, in my opinion. Some very, very, very pro users, like less than 1% of users out there, know how to build an agent. And they're like what I would call quasi agents right now. Most of what we're getting as agents are actually just automation with some AI baked into it.
Right.
That's it. Lots of that going on. But it certainly sounds more sophisticated to call it an agent, and it makes it easier to sell tools. I'm guilty. I've done it. It just sounds fancy. It just sounds like something intriguing to talk about. But most of it isn't agents. They're just automation. In fact, usually they're just custom GPTs, which isn't agentic at all because you have to walk it through step by step through a process. But agents will be a big deal. It won't be long before they're everywhere, and they will be massive. Probably by the end of this year, if not this time next year.
Well,
We might even see some more peaks of it like this summer. I'm already starting to see some early things done. And to me, an agent is an AI tool that just has more autonomy.
Right.
It doesn't just have one objective to come back. It has access to tools. We're starting to see it right now with O3 because O3, that new reasoning model, has access to more tools than just its long-term memory of what it's been trained on.
Right.
If it doesn't know the answer, it can go search for the answer. Ooh, that's starting to feel a little agentic, they call it. You know, if it thinks giving you a picture is the best way to explain it to you, then it'll just make a picture. It has a few more options, making it feel more agentic. We have all the right things, we have all the right pieces on the table in order to create agents, but it's still taking time to come up with the networks. Like we just had the A2A network developed by Google and backed by Salesforce and a lot of other big companies so that agents can talk to each other. But we have to have all this like ground floor stuff and then plug up our reasoning models to it and take time to develop standards for agents to really go out there and have the autonomy that they need in order to interact with all the systems that you interact with.
Well, so if, to your point, if agents are still sort of overhyped a bit right now, are custom GPTs worth considering for folks? Are people thinking that it's too much of a technology barrier because of unfamiliarity? I mean, you've written a number of custom GPTs. My suspicion is that people will, once they try it, will realize it's a lot easier to write one than they may have thought. But I'm just wondering advice, if any, you would have for them.
I think custom GPTs are where everybody needs to start. In fact, I wouldn't even, this is like my order of operations. When somebody asks me like, where am I at and where should I go next? Like, what should I focus on? Because there's so many things you can focus on. My first question is, one, do you pay for ChatGPT? That tells me if you're a beginner or starting to become intermediate. If you're paying for if you're not paying for it, like get more use cases and start using it enough to where you start running into the limits enough, right? Once you start running into the limits enough, that means you're starting to get at least $20 worth of use out of it. Upgrade. Once you're using ChatGPT enough, use it more. Probably get into some of the more creative tools. Try to play with all the different features and experiment more to learn its more capabilities. Right after that, start building custom GPTs. It is the place where you can like put in the reps that will prepare you for the next step. To do what marketing automation with AI and then agents is like the next level up there. Agents right now are pretty difficult to make. Like you have to be really good. You have to really understand all the different use cases from just playing around with the tools. You probably need to have built some custom GPTs because I promise if you can't build a custom GPT, there's no way you're going to be able to automate things easily.
Yeah.
If you've used make.com, it's freaking hard. Like that tool seems intuitive. It's not. It takes me an hour or two for every single node on that sucker, or NAN. Either one takes a long time to set up. And I'm really good at marketing automation. It's really difficult.
We have a bit of distance to travel.
So I usually say, like, I usually ask, have you built a custom GPT yet? If yes, have you built more than a dozen? If you've built more than a dozen custom GPTs, then I'd be like, okay, you want to start digging into things like you're ready and probably starting to feel the pain of not being able to automatically trigger one without you having to be there. Now you're starting to talk about automation, start using AI and automation. And then from AI and automation, start dealing with, start thinking about agents. It starts to become more clear to you how to leverage AI that it doesn't just complete one task in a sequence, but actually can make decisions and being handed a database or tools to be able to make decisions with in order to get you where you need to go. We're still coming up with use cases for agents, though. It's not always clear, like, what would one do with an agent that an automation can't do? Well, like, I'm still, like, my friend came up with a scenario and I'm like, oh, that would be a case for an agent. He's like, I want every sales call to produce content, but I need to make sure it's not producing content based on previous sales calls where I've answered other questions. I want it to smartly read the transcript and discern if there's new content in there and check it against the database. That would be an agent workflow because it has to actually read it, scan the database to check, see if it's in there, and then with that understanding of what it read, and then go extract it and then hand off that section to go turn into a blog post. That's like multiple steps of thinking. We're just now getting to the point where AI can do that. But hardly anybody's actually built those kinds of workflows yet because it's so new and it's hard.
I've used it to compare versions of a contract to see what changed. But that's me manually intervening.
Yeah.
But yeah, we'll get there. Just as we come to a close, there will be people who will ask, besides ChatGPT, what's your AI tech stack look like currently?
have what I call the 5 types of AI marketing, and that helps me kind of organize my tools too. I'll run through them really quickly, and then I'll tell you what tools I use for each of them. There's AI Copilot that you like is your day-to-day driver and helps you think. It's your thing that helps you think through things, where you ideate, you even come up with content. So there's your AI Copilot, there's content creation, hyper-personalization, conversational AI, and then analytics and forecasting.
Okay.
For my daily one, my Copilot, it's ChatGPT. Claude is also great. Gemini, fine. Like all those are examples of copilots.
Right.
For content creation, I'm mainly using ChatGPT, but I also use something called NAN, which is a marketing automation stack, so that every time I publish a podcast episode, it automatically uploads it to YouTube, sets the thumbnail, creates a blog post, posts the YouTube video and the blog post into my WordPress site, then scans it again to creates multiple social posts, sticks it into a database for me to go and access later. I'm still working on it, getting it to post automatically to certain social sites, but I use that a lot for content creation. For hyper personalization, I'm using my high level CRM. It's probably that's my favorite. After ChatGPT, high level is my favorite AI tool because it's a full marketing tech stack, but it has all AI plugged into all the right places. So I love that tool. And that handles my conversational AI tool. High Level has a great chat bot for websites, for DMs, and for inbound phone calls. And it all gets into the same CRM. So if you ever consider conversational AI, it really needs to have a tight integration with your CRM if it's not already baked into it natively, because all that stuff needs to be tracked within the records. Soon, I'm sure they'll be able to pull contextually, like, hey, last time we talked about, that would be nice. So conversational AI, Hub's High Level. And then for analytics, there's only one tool that I know of that I really like or trust right now, and that's Microsoft Clarity. It is like Google Analytics and ChatGPT smashed together. It's like Google Analytics where you can have your dashboard and all the different things you'd expect. But on the right-hand side, you have Microsoft Copilot, right, which is ChatGPT under the hood, where you can ask it questions like, hey, what are my top 3 most visited blog posts? What's common about them? You can actually mine the data and actually get answers back, and it's wonderful. Pretty soon it'll probably be able to do forecasting reports, so I'm looking forward to that, but it's still pretty early in that area. So that's the 5 types of AI marketing and the tech stack behind it.
Very comprehensive. And no, thank you for that. That's the existing tech stack. Last thing. Is there what if any AI solution are you that's emerging that's sparked your curiosity that you're taking a look at but have not necessarily adopted just yet?
Gonna have to be like any AI video. Like I'm watching it. Okay. It's just not ready. I almost never use it except for small little things. AI video hasn't had its ChatGPT moment yet. Images just had their moment a month ago with ChatGPT's image generator, right? That's what they called it, and they were right. It's great, and it's a totally different level up. We haven't had that for video yet, but I continue to watch it. I continue to be amazed by it. That and voice tech is getting so close to, I'm like, dang, like I'm having to wrestle through the implications of being able to create a digital version of me that people can talk to just like this, and it would actually give realistic answers based on the data and actually look like me, sound like me. I'm like, do I even want that? I'm not sure I do. Like, it's almost like, as much as I love having AI write for me and repurpose my content, I'm like that. I'm actually wrestling internally right now whether I want that to be a thing. I'm pretty sure I'm a no on that, but that will be a realistic thing where people can do that in a year or two. And that's something that I'm watching very closely that's not yet available.
Well, I'm laughing because I think of the introverts. This could go to a party for me, and my social battery wouldn't be drained, but my avatars would. But yeah, to your point, I have been using the image generation of ChatGPT, and like it's had its moment. It's blowing me away. But given my background in film, I look at the AI video stuff, and it's like it still looks a little too glossy, a little too, I don't know, just artificial, cold, and we're not there yet. But I, like you, I'm paying attention to it, so we'll see where it goes. Well, let me just say thank you so much for your time. This was great to sit down and have a conversation and have you walk us through, 1, your journey, and 2, what you're focused on, and share the insights of the learning that you've had so far. So thank you.
Thanks for having me on.
Thank you for joining us on this episode of the Low Production High Value Show. Be sure to give us a rating and subscribe to make sure you never miss an episode. Don't forget to check out Volterra at volterradigital.com to learn more about how they can support your social media marketing.